The Battle of Zama marks the start of the Roman conquest. The Battle of Zama, 202 BCE, was the final battle of the Second Punic War, 218 to 202 BCE, in which Hannibal Barca of Carthage, l. 247 to 183 BCE, was beaten by Scipio Africanus of Rome, l. 236 to 183 BCE, resulting in the victory of Rome. Hannibal's Second Punic War began when he invaded Saguntum, a Roman ally in Spain, and followed with a series of stunning triumphs in northern Italy, the most famous of which was the Battle of Cannae in 216 BCE. Scipio assumed leadership of the Roman armies after Cannae, fought Hannibal's brother Hasdrubal Barca, c. 244 to 207 BCE, in Spain, drove him into Italy, and then drew Hannibal back to North Africa by threatening Carthage. In defense of his home city, Hannibal confronted Scipio at Zama, but Scipio won the day, utilizing Hannibal's Cannae tactics, and Carthage fell to the Romans. Hannibal remained a fugitive for the remainder of his life, eventually killing himself rather than surrender to the Romans. Scipio was first acclaimed as Rome's savior, but his compatriots gradually turned against him, forgetting what they owed him. He fled Rome for his villa, and in his will, he requested that he be buried on his estate rather than in the ungrateful city of Rome. Scipio's excellent tactics, modeled on Hannibal's, are known from the Battle of Zama, and they would later become standard operating procedures for the Roman military, allowing them to expand their empire. The First Punic War began when Carthage and Rome clashed over the island of Sicily, which each held portions of 264 to 241 BCE. Hamilcar Barca, l. 275 to 228 BCE, commanded the Carthaginian troops, which utilized their navy to hit Roman ports and outposts along Italy's coast without notice, severing supply lines, and then attacking with their army. Carthage possessed the largest fleet in the Mediterranean at the start of the war, but the Romans were solely used to land battles. Early in the battle, Hamilcar's deft tactics and his sailors' knowledge of Carthaginian naval warfare led to a string of significant wins. However, Rome rapidly learned how to battle at sea, and the Carthaginian leadership gave little assistance to its generals, thus the conflict swung in favor of the Romans. Hamilcar beat Rome at Drepana in 249 BCE, but with less and less backing from his home government, he gradually lost battles as Rome got stronger, forcing Carthage to ask for peace and pay a hefty war indemnity to the victors in 241 BCE. Hamilcar went to Spain ostensibly to take the silver mines there to pay off Cartagena's debt to Rome, but began to re-equip the army to resume the war. Hannibal and Hasdrubal were with him. When Hamilcar died in 228 BC, the army command went to the Hasdrubal fair, which favored diplomatic measures with Rome over the military conflict. Hasdrubal fair was killed in 221 BC, however, and command went to Hannibal, who had sworn eternal enmity with Rome. The Romans staged a coup at the city of Saguntum, south of the Ebro, in 218 BCE, and installed an anti-Carthaginian government. Hannibal marched on the city, laid siege to it, and conquered it, which the Romans said was a war crime. They requested the handover of Hannibal, and when the Carthaginian Senate refused, war was launched. Hannibal left his brother Hasdrubal in charge of the troops in Spain and marched his army into Italy across the Alps to battle the Romans. He destroyed every Roman army sent against him, culminating in the Battle of Cannae in 216 BCE, where he tricked the Romans into falling into a trap. Hannibal established a crescent formation with his light infantry in the center and his heavy infantry in the crescent formation, knowing the Romans preferred their traditional tactic of hiding their heavy infantry behind the front line of their lighter infantry with horse assistance from the wings. The Romans relied on the might of the charge to break the center of an enemy's defenses via sheer numbers, and in this fight, they rushed against Hannibal's lines, which yielded before them. The Romans pressed forward, but the Carthaginians, who appeared to be withdrawing, were really regrouping along the crescent to the left and right. As a result, there was no longer an actual center for the Romans to breach, even though it appeared that there was, and by the time they realized their error, they had been surrounded and the trap had been closed. 44,000 Roman warriors were slain on the battlefield, and the rest were scattered. Rome was totally demoralized, and no general could be found to assume leadership of what remained of the Roman army, since every general now seemed to believe that fighting Hannibal was a death mission. Scipio volunteered, despite the fact that he was only 24 years old at the time and was thought to be too young and inexperienced to fight Hannibal. He embarked on a mission to Spain with 10,000 soldiers and 1,000 cavalry to confront Hannibal Barca, who had murdered both his father and uncle in the Battle of Upper Baides in 211 BCE. In 209 BCE, Scipio led his army against the city of Carthago Nova, New Carthage, in Spain. Because of its defenses and the natural protection of a lagoon on one side of the city, New Carthage was considered to be impenetrable. Prior to Cannae, Roman combat depended heavily on numbers and raw might to take a city or drive an opponent from the battlefield. Scipio obtained knowledge that the water level of the lagoon could be reduced to a far lower level using sluices that allowed water in and out of the lagoon, following Hannibal's lead as a thinking leader. The lagoon was utilized as a salt marsh for extracting sea salt, and Scipio understood all he had to do was divert the city's defenses long enough for the lagoon's level to drop low enough for his army to cross. Scipio took use of the lagoon's advantage by commanding his second-in-command, Gaius Laelius, to prepare a naval attack and sending his soldiers towards the city's gates. He led a column through the river at low tide, broke the walls, and seized the city once the sluices had been used. In his subsequent encounters with the Carthaginian troops, Scipio would employ the same tactic. Scipio encountered Hannibal Barca in combat at Becula in 208 BCE and saw that he would have to lead his soldiers across a small river and then charge uphill against a fortified position in order to assault. Scipio noticed the dry gullies on each side of the plateau Hasdrubal had defended and dispatched a poorly armed force straight across the river and up the slope while his main army split and headed toward the two gullies, again thinking what Hannibal could do in such a circumstance. The Carthaginians had their sights set on the middle, went to attack, and were crushed by the wings that swooped in from both sides. With what remained of his army, Hasdrubal withdrew across the Alps and into Italy, following Hannibal's path. However, before he could join Hannibal's army, he was defeated and slain at the Battle of the Metaurus by Gaius Claudius Nero, c. 237, c. 199 BCE. Nero then returned to trying to capture and kill Hannibal, which he had so far been unsuccessful in doing, while Scipio concluded his job in Spain. In 205 BCE, Scipio realized that if he attacked Carthage directly, Hannibal would be sent from Italy to protect it, so he retreated from Spain and invaded North Africa. He conquered Utica after a siege, united with the Numidian king Massinissa, and marched on Carthage. Hannibal, who had been wreaking havoc on Italy for the last 12 years, was sent to protect the city. When they clashed on the battlefield, both forces totaled around 40,000 men. Hannibal had been forced to fight without elephants in Italy, the majority of whom had died crossing the Alps, but now that he was back in Africa, he positioned his elephant corps in front of his lines, followed by a continuous line of mercenaries, Libyan allies, and finally his Carthaginian veterans from the Italian campaigns. He stationed his cavalry in the wings on his left and right. Scipio laid out his lines as well, but instead of a continuous, unbroken line across the field, he placed them in columns. The gaps in these columns were hidden in front by light infantry, giving the impression that Scipio had organized his soldiers in the same way as Hannibal did. The Italian cavalry, commanded by Gaius Laelius, was on the Roman army's left flank, while the Numidian cavalry of Massinissa was on the right. Hannibal took the opening move, assaulting Scipio's army with his elephants. Scipio instructed his troops to keep their places, and then the light infantry concealing the front line advanced into the columns at a predetermined signal, while Scipio ordered trumpets to blow and drums to beat. The elephants fled through the alleyways between the columns or turned back to crush the Carthaginian soldiers, frightened by the Roman trumpet blasts and loud screams. The elephant charge by Hannibal had failed. The Roman and Numidian cavalry then charged the Carthaginian horsemen and drove them from the field. The Roman cavalry swung to the left and right around the infantry troops on the field, and the two cavalry units battled behind the Carthaginian lines as a result of this maneuver. Scipio's soldiers advanced, moving from column formation to continuous lines, and forced the Carthaginians' mercenary front lines back. Because the lines were so closely packed, the mercenaries were forced to fall back against the Libyan soldiers, who were unable to give way due to the presence of Carthaginians behind them. While the mercenaries were being crushed by the approaching Roman soldiers and the Libyans, they began attacking the Libyans in an attempt to break through and flee. At the same time, Laelius and Massinissa's united cavalry returned to attack the Carthaginian soldiers in the rear. Hannibal's troops were almost completely encircled, 20,000 people were killed or seriously injured. Hannibal himself retreated to Carthage, where he told the Senate that he had lost not just the battle, but the war as well, and that they should ask for peace.